the concentration camps of Europe. Tullow felt that King's speech was irresponsible. It is indeed sad that so respected a national leader King should have voiced his dissent so irresponsibly. His speech could have been written in North Vietnam, and it may have been. King's speech was filled with all types of other asinine lies. We poison their water. We kill 1 million acres of their crops. We may have killed 1 million of them, mostly children. They see the soldiers selling their sisters, soliciting their mothers. Throwing in a comment to relate it to his civil rights war, King said in one more flagrant lie, twice as many Negroes as whites are in combat. Senator Thomas Dodd, D. Connecticut, noted that Martin Luther King, Jr. was aiding the enemies of the United States. Senator Dodd correctly noted that King was calling for the admission of Red China to the United Nations and demanding that the United States commit itself to negotiate with the Viet Cong. And King felt that, implied Senator Dodd, the United States should reorient its policy along the lines of accommodation with communism. Continuing, Senator Dodd proclaimed, Dr. King has since announced that he will write letters within the next 10 days to the President of North Vietnam and the leaders of the governments of Communist China and the Soviet Union. If Dr. King carries on a correspondence with foreign governments, it could run counter to the provisions of the Logan Act, a federal statute which says any citizen of the United States, wherever he may be, who, without authority of the United States, directly or indirectly commences or carries on any correspondence or intercourse with any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof, with intent to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government or of any officer or agent thereof, in relation to any disputes or controversies with the United States, or to defeat the measures of the United States, shall be fined not more than $5,000, or imprisoned not more than 3 years, or both. Close quote. Who did King think that he was? He had no right and no authority to make negotiations, pacts, agreements, or even discuss the war with the communist leadership whom America was battling. It seems quite evident that King was assisting the Viet Cong by his speeches in the U.S., and, consequentially, hurting U.S. soldiers stationed in Vietnam. During the heated debates that took place over America's policy with the Vietnam War, Joseph O'Meara, the dean of Notre Dame University's law school, and an activist in the American Civil Liberties Union, felt that irreparable harm was being done to the civil rights movement. For the most part, O'Meara said, I am persuaded the objectors are either communists, or traitors, or cowards. Continuing, O'Meara could not help but notice that King and one of his associates, Carmichael, weep only for the enemy. King's alliances should have been clear to everyone. Yet people still fell for his double talk, since he was an articulate spokesman. An excellent example of King's gift for double talk was his response to some clergymen who called him an extremist. Rather than disagree with the clergyman, King admitted to being an extremist, but said it in such a way that he likened himself to Jesus Christ and said that the world was in dire need of his creative extremism. The question is not whether we are extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified for the same crime, the crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality, and thus fell below their environment. The other, 29, Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. So, after all, maybe the South, the nation, and the world are in dire need of creative extremists. King had no problem voicing his feelings for the Viet Cong. But, for some odd reason, he never seemed to speak badly of their actions, even when they tortured the South Vietnamese. Where were King's complaints about the 2,429 Vietnamese citizens who were killed between July 1965 and December 1966 by the Viet Cong? Where was King's condemnation when the U.S. troops discovered an atrocity at a mountain village 15 miles east of Pleiku on August 24, 1965? The Viet Cong had just executed the aged village chief and his youngest son. The village chief's wife was still alive, but the Viet Cong had tortured her by carving flesh from her body and cutting her arms. Why did King, who claimed to be a man of peace, not complain when Viet Cong guerrillas kidnapped an entire village of men, women, and children in an unprecedented act of terrorism? Why did King only condemn America, the very nation that was attempting to liberate the South Vietnamese from the communist dictatorship of the Viet Cong? To accurately answer the aforementioned questions, You have to understand the word peace and how communists use it. Like the deceptive names that communists have used for their organizations, they also try to disguise their true intentions by throwing in honorable words like peace, justice, liberty, etc. in their sentences, words that make their reasoning seem wholesome to those not aware of their ulterior motives. The communists have been doing that for quite some time, and are proficient at it. On April 1st, 1951, the House Committee on Un-American Activities, HCUA, released a report, The Communist Peace Offensive, a campaign to disarm and defeat the United States. The report said, the most dangerous hoax ever devised by the international communist conspiracy is the current worldwide peace offensive. In the report, the HCUA noted that the communists have boldly seized upon the word peace in an effort to secure moral sanction for its own aggressive designs. To achieve this, communists must at the same time portray their victims and intended victims as being ruled by imperialist warmongers and war criminals. Close quote. In short, the communists decided that the best way to disarm their enemies, the people of America who found the communist ideology to be insipid, was to propagandize the peace line so stridently that Americans would embrace it. The communist goal was simple: disarm the enemy from within. After all, a head-on attack would have been disastrous for any communist nation or any group working within America. The Communist Party, USA, in their so-called Spring Mobilization for Peace on April 15, 1967, said, "We are now approaching a moment in which the fight for peace can develop into the greatest grassroots movement this country has seen in more than a quarter of a century." Emphasis added. Evidently, they did not realize that fight and peace are opposites. Unfortunately, their movement did, indeed, become the greatest grassroots movement this country has seen, and now has numerous organizations that it created sowing the seeds of decadence. King was familiar with the double talk that the Communist Party espoused as their party line, and used it to his benefit wherever he went. For instance, when King attended the 100th anniversary for the black communist W.E.B. Du Bois, King was quoted as having said the following: "Our irrational obsession with anti-communism has led us into many quagmires. Dr. Du Bois will be with us when we go to Washington to demand our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." King and his comrades were not being deprived of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nor did King or any of his comrades, like the communist Jack Odell, who also attended the event, have an irrational obsession with anti-communism. It seems that the only irrational obsession was their belief in communism, going to celebrate the life of a man who was a self-admitted communist and who hated the U.S. during his life. King's activities upset quite a few people in the government, at least the ones who were not fooled by King's articulate double talk. King's double talk led to J. Edgar Hoover calling King the most notorious liar in the country. Hoover never changed his mind about King. King and Hoover became at odds with one another because of King's anti-American activities. Also, former President Harry Truman did not like King's tactics. Truman said King was a troublemaker. Congressman John Ashbrook of Ohio was perturbed over King's subversive activities. Congressman Ashbrook noted that King was disloyal to the United States. Continuing his statement, Congressman Ashbrook stated, "King maligned his country with lies and accusations that come straight from the Communist Party line. He praised Ho Chi Minh as the only true leader of the Vietnamese people. He condemned the United States as the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, and likened our nation to Hitler-esque Germany. He condemned the late President Diem as one of the most 30 vicious modern dictators, and threw out wild charges like the United States may have killed 1 million children in Vietnam." Today, King has become an internationally celebrated figure among blacks. In South Africa, blacks there revere Martin Luther King Jr. The tradition of civil disobedience is now commonly associated with Thoreau, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr., though they are not its originators, said Macjeffy Matlabi, a black South African writer who is sympathetic to Mandela's African National Congress. Just as the U.S. had riots under King's leadership, and still continues to have sporadic riots under the guidance of others, South Africa experiences similar violence. As far as the ANC is concerned, there is no doubt that it did spend some days preparing its following for non-violent action, said Matlabi. During the course of non-violence, modeled after King's non-violent tactics in America,